Hi everyone, I'm Zach, this is the Shaken Fist. And don't worry, you can see that this isn't normal, the Shaken Fist. The rest of the video is just the intro and outro, because I filmed these later. So that's cool, I guess. Yeah, I fell and hurt myself, so for those that don't know, I can't, I'm not got any broken bones or anything, I just can't fucking sit in my chair for more than about 4 seconds without my tendons screaming at me in pain. So that's cool. So, like, subscribe, comment, why don't you go over and join the Patreon if you want to, help the channel a bit more. And I have a little treat coming out for everyone Christmas week. So look forward to that. I have posted one of them on my Discord already. So if you haven't joined my Discord, why don't you go over and do that? Because that's a barrel of laughs and I don't know how to use it properly. So you could laugh at me being competent at the internet there as well. Ha ha ha. Because, that's always cool. It's starting in the new year. I have some new shit coming. Going to look at some Discworld. We're going to go through Ray Comfort, but this Ray Comfort textbook. I'm going to continue Religion Unraveled and Bottom of the Barrel. So I look forward to all of that. Remember, there's no real streams. I know I had one last night. But that was for my birthday because it's my birthday today. Hooray! It's my birthday and I'm in so much pain. Ha 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 ha. So let's have fun laughing at Trent Horn. Well, I take lots of painkillers and get drunk on my birthday because it's my birthday. Hooray for me! I'm older than I was before. What fun.
I mean, what's the difference between an amputated limb coming into existence from nothing, proving God exists, and a universe coming into nothing, coming into being from nothing?
Well, idiot, the difference would be is that if I if I was working in a factory and I got my jammed in some mechanical contraption and lost my arm, and then I prayed for it to come back, and it did. Well, I think the difference is I was there to see it, you see, because I went to bed one night, and I had a stump for an arm, and then I woke up the next day, and I had a brand new arm. There was no scars, there was no surgery, nothing. I didn't even wake up, I just woke up, it was there. Bam! It happened. Whereas the beginning of the universe happened 14.7 billion years ago, or some roundabout approximation, and nobody was there to see it. So, inferring that God did it when we infer redshift and fucking, inflation and dark drift and dark flow and everything from redshift, and the movement of the universe, now everything's moving apart from itself and we can see things like the cosmic background radiation. Well, then we think of it because of that, you see, because we can infer stuff from what we've seen, and then when it happens to us personally, it becomes a personal experience. And it's almost like atheists all the time say this sort of thing, personal experience, is really good proof for you, but not anyone else. It's almost like they say that as well. Weird, isn't it? It's weird how we go, here's the proof of the things that we found. And then we go, hey, you say that you can talk to God, do that and get an answer, and you go, oh my God, how dare they do that? They don't want to have a God of the gaps themselves, do they?
Wouldn't that also prove God exists if that's what happened?
Yeah, if that's what happened. But you don't have any proof that's what happened. You just claim that's what happened. So like I said, the difference between the arm and the universe is we could watch one happen to us and the other one didn't. We can't. That's why it's different to say that the God of the gaps is about the universe and not the arm. Because we prayed for the arm, we didn't pray for the universe. It was already there. Weird how that works. It's weird how the two very different situations that you're trying to equate as exactly the same thing to prove your point. But when you actually think about it, for even a quarter of a second, when you're not trying to protect your own beliefs, it's dumb.
The bottom line is that no matter what wildly fantastic scenario an atheist proposes that would allegedly prove God exists, you could always ask him, how do you know that there isn't an unknown natural explanation for that scenario?
There are known knowns. There are things we know we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know.
So, Mr. Trent Horn, wanting evidence is bad because it could be anything else, right? If it's just a mystical, magical being beyond the ends of the universe, it could be anything else. Why are you trying so hard to make it so people don't believe? Or is it really that you're more trying to protect the feelings of your listeners and watchers, anytime an atheist says that to them, because, you know, some of these people might actually try and go, okay, and they're not get an answer, and they might feel bad. So actually, this video is more about consoling theists, isn't it? It's about saying, don't fall into the traps. I know that we say that we talk to God every day, and he, you know, don't you hear that voice in the back of your mind? It's God. He's letting you know he's there. You know, it's always that shit, right? Until an atheist says, well, why don't you use that to prove to me that he exists? Well, I couldn't do that. That's just, oh, gee golly gosh. I couldn't. I mean, I look at the time. I have to go. I have a taxi. The train's on fire. I just have to be somewhere else, anywhere but here.
This is illustrated well in the following exchange between the Protestant philosopher William Lane Craig and the atheist philosopher Keith Parsons.
But you're saying that when you say extraordinary, really what you're saying is no amount of evidence would convince me of these extraordinary claims.
Sure it would. If tomorrow morning, immediately after breakfast, suddenly there was an earthquake, and a silvery light shone in the sky and the leaves dropped from the trees, and I dashed outside, and there, towering over us like 100 Everest, was this giant figure with lightning playing around his Michelangeloid face, and he pointed down and saying, "Be assured, Keith M. Parsons, that I do in fact exist, and I'm sick of your logic chopping." Dr. Craig, I would join you in the pew of the church, in the front pew of the church the next Sunday.
But the problem is that people are saying fantastical things that'll never happen because, they're supposed to be fantastical things that would never happen because the only things that could do that are God. That's the point. But these people don't like it because they want you to just believe on faith. They don't want to have to prove anything. They don't want to have to put any effort in, right? They would rather argue with each other about arguments than actually try and prove anything they have because the other person isn't asking them to prove their shit all the time. And even when they do, because they're arguing with another fucking Christian knobhead, all they need is, well, I have a fluid enough argument, and that's all that matters, right? Because solid facts don't matter to these people unless it proves God, and then it's the most important solid fact ever. And all the other solid facts, well, they don't matter, right? And the fun thing is you could tell because these fuckers do it with the shroud all the time, even though we could disprove it every way from fucking Sunday. But no, they don't care because they think they have a little nugget of truth. And because they think they have a little nugget of truth, well, then it's okay to extrapolate to everything. So why don't you just already believe? Why do you need all these fantastical items to happen for you to believe? I believe already. And these people are so fucking small in their own minds and so unsure about themselves that they need everybody else in the world to agree with their fucking world of bullshit that they've created. And if you don't, well, then you're the most evil because you're saying they're dumb, because you're saying they're wrong. And they've thought it and they couldn't be correct, right?
But earlier in the debate, Keith Parsons said it would always be more reasonable to think the disciples hallucinated when they thought Jesus rose from the dead than that Jesus actually did rise from the dead.
Why do you believe that it could not have been a hallucination? Surely you know from the things I've said and from the extant literature on the nature of hallucinations, which I assume you've investigated, that hallucinations, as I've said repeatedly this evening, are often experienced by people as being extremely real.
And William Lane Craig brings up the perfect rejoinder.
In the front pew of the church the next Sunday.
You don't think that you would have said, "Boy, I was having a hallucination."
Yeah, you were so owned. Like, oh no. I always love how atheists say these are the things that would convince us, and then Christians try so fervently to point out how it wouldn't convince us. Because having people think that we can't change our minds, even though we're the ones that have changed our minds the most of the time, because, I know more and more nowadays people are being raised in more secular and atheistic families, but that never used to be the case. So to be an atheist, especially an older atheist, like that fucking old-ass video from like the early 90s or whatever, and like fucking people like me that were born in the 80s, and people that were born before that, it's almost like we all had to change our minds to get here. And like, these people would rather have us come back to the faith through fear of the devil and blood and like what's going to happen in hell, than through God having to lift an all-powerful finger to do the minimal amount of work.
What's interesting is that some atheists have even conceded that nothing could prove God exists. since you could always imagine another unknown explanation being the true cause of whatever thing you observe.
So in principle, it's impossible to ever persuade you that God exists.
I didn't quite say that, but...
well, what would persuade you?
I can't conceive of... I suppose even if I died and was confronted with St. Peter saying, welcome to heaven, I'd probably think I was dreaming.
It's almost like different people have different opinions. Wow. Wow. Oh, wow. Wow. I can't believe it. People that don't live by a dogmatic set of rules from on high and handed down from, yesteryear, and don't have a framework, as one JCO would like to call it over and over again, and not brainwashing. Like, they don't change the minds, right? So that's super pious and super cool because, they're doing it for God in the face of all this bastardry and stuff everywhere, right? So because they're doing that in the face of atheism, well, then it's cool. But if an atheist then can't, change his mind, well, then that's bad because they're not agreeing with him. Do you see how that works? Agree with me or die!
And one of the big ways people do that is by torturing each other with the English language because it's cheap and available, or indeed any language that they know how to speak. And people will kill you over time. They will shave out every last morsel of fun in you with little harmless sounding phrases that people use every day. Like, be realistic. Can't you just for half a second be realistic? Now what that means is, see reality my way or die!
How dare you? You're an evil person. And just because you don't agree with me. And if you showed the same stalwart and bullheaded fucking things that I'm doing, but were on my side, I would applaud them. Do you see how that works? Do you see how that double standard works? It's weird, that, isn't it? I say weird. What I mean is an obvious disingenuous piece of shit.
So it seems like you can either have an extreme God of the gaps view towards the arguments for God and write them off, or be open to God existing, but you can't be both.
Why is it that when an atheist says, well, Christians think this, well, I'm not that far of a Christian, I'm not that far of a Christianity, I'm not this, right? But then when it comes to an atheist, well, all the atheists think in an amalgamous group, right? And since all the atheists think in an amalgamous group, then they must all think the same things, even though they all say different stuff, right? And then when you get a whole group of people saying different stuff, right? Well, then, it's just a pointless group to begin with. I know that there's like, 45,000 denominations of Christianity. That's what Crystal was saying on fucking Mike's stream last night. And there's like, 14,000 in the US alone, right? But we're the ones with the weird, diverse point of views, because these cunts, if you say, well, this version of Christianity, they're not real Christians. Not real Christians. It's great how they've always got these pithy little answers like that. Well, it's the God, well, you don't understand the beginning of the universe, so it's God. You don't agree with me, so you're a heathen. Or you've done bad things, so it's the devil. Right? It's weird how human agency never comes into how people think, even though we're supposed to have all this free will that they keep on banging on and 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 on about. It's weird how that works. It's weird how every time, so you have all gambit of atheists saying things. So these atheists are wrong for saying this, and these atheists are wrong for saying this, and these atheists are wrong for saying this. And then we'll just lump them all together. We're only halfway through this fucking video.
Instead, atheists, they should just be open to the classical arguments for the existence of God.
Oh my God.
And if they're not convinced by those arguments,
Serenity now!
Be able to explain either which premise in the argument they don't think is true, or what fallacy, so civic logical fallacy, the argument commits.
A lot of institutions in this country want to control your language, tell you what you can say and what you can't say. Government wants to control information and control language because that's the way you control thought. Same with religion. Religion is nothing but mind control. Religion is just trying to control your mind, control your thoughts. So they're going to tell you some things you shouldn't say. And besides telling you things you shouldn't say, religion's going to suggest to you some things you ought to be saying. Here's something you ought to say first thing when you wake up in the morning. Here's something you ought to say just before you go to sleep at night. Here's something we always say on the third Wednesday in April after the first full moon in spring at 4 o'clock when the bells ring. Religion is always suggesting things you ought to be saying.
But we want to argue this way. Why won't you all argue the way we want you to argue? I know that we've been in control of the way everyone thought and the way that people think and the words they use for like 2 millennia, right? Or just under. And I'd really like it to go back to that. So instead of arguing the way that you see fit because you're a different person than me, I would really prefer it if you would all just argue the way that I would like you to argue, because I feel on firmer ground this way. And if I feel on firmer ground this way, well, then I feel like I can have an upper hand in the argument. It's always funny how these Christian cunts want to tell you exactly what you can say, how you can argue, what points you can bring up, what points aren't valid, and, oh, you've read this wrong and you've done this wrong. It's always weird how there's all these different interpretations and different ways of everything, because we have all this free will, except when it comes to this shit, and you got to believe exactly what this cunt says, or whatever cunt you're talking to at the time. It's funny how that works, isn't it?
It's something that I call analytic perfectionism, and you may have it. Let me read to you from Proverbs 3 verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, there's what to do. And then it says that warning, and lean not to your own understanding. And saying, don't try and figure things out. Just trust the Lord like a little child trusts their father. Don't even question it.
Oh, just argue the way I want you to. Well, I want you to argue on the basis of facts and evidence and not philosophical arguments. Because philosophical arguments don't mean dick. Philosophical arguments only mean that you are good at using them. They don't provide actual truth. It's weird that those who can, science. Those who can't, philosophize.
Shut your fucking mouth! No problem, John. Shut the fuck up, you cunt!
Now, let me address a few objections to this argument that I'm offering.
I haven't watched this video in a while. I wonder if he'll actually talk about any of the things that I've brought up to this whatsoever. I actually genuinely wonder, because I haven't watched it again before I started. You know, like an atheist junior.
Take care, Aladdin. I'm off to Oxton to get some pie and mash. I'm a cockney. Oh.
One objection is that theists, all they have to do to prove God exists is just offer repeatable, testable predictions of the God hypothesis, and that would prove God exists.
What? No.
That's why I bring up Elijah's bull, or Ezra's bull, or whatever. You know, because that would be and like I said before, it'd be a repeatable, testable process with variations that you could make predictions off of.
This is basically saying, well, if you can scientifically prove God exists, then atheists would change their minds. But what is science? Like, what is science?
But what is water? It's a difficult question because water is impossible to describe. One might ask the same about birds. What are birds? We just don't know.
Science is a process of steps of finding out information in a scientific process. Now, people like to pretend that science is a lot of different things. It's used colloquially as a pile of, you know, like a whole collection of information. It's used as a collective term for fields of study. The term science means lots of things, but we're talking about it this way. We're talking about the scientific method where you try to disprove your hypothesis, repeat them, study, publish them, and have them peer reviewed, and everyone makes predictions and waits till those predictions come true or not. That would be the scientific process that we are talking about.
Science is the search for natural explanations of observed phenomena. If we could show something was testable, predictable part of our world, whatever effect that might be, like let's say only Catholic priests can change water into wine when they say certain words. Say we do show that. Why wouldn't we conclude this is just an unexplained part of nature?
Because if it was an unexplained part of nature, science would do the tests, say, we'll use your thing of, the priest has waved the hands and he's made the wine happen, right? So let's say he makes, water transubstantiate into Jesus's blood in the form of wine, right? Why would science showing that they could do that prove that to us if it could be something else? Because science and not the scientific method, but science as it is as a pile of information, as a collected information, right, says that according to for basically everything, says according to the best of our knowledge, this is the process that happens. Because we know for certain that most of the things that we understand in the scientific fields of biology, chemistry, and physics and stuff like that is probably wrong in some way, because we don't have a full, complete picture of exactly how existence works. And since we don't have a complete, full picture of how existence works, there is, at any point in the future, a time where we could find out new information. And do you know what they will do then, when they find out that information? They will then change what they think about science, and then put that into the different, and then maybe even redo some old experiments and use that new knowledge to see if that changes any of their results. Just because we believe it now on a scientific test doesn't mean that if it could be something else out there, it doesn't mean that it's a god of the fucking gaps. What it means is this is what we can show to the best of our knowledge. And if we find out other available information in the meantime, we will change our minds again.
That science has yet to find a name for. Can you think of a name for it?
Oh, what would you do? Try thinking like a normal fucking person for a change, instead of trying to think of arguments that'll give you a fucking one-up and use some fucking common sense instead of Christian common sense.
This objection is basically saying, I'll believe a supernatural being exists if you can prove it is a regular part of the natural world that we observe. But that's a contradiction.
It's only a contradiction because you say it is. God has to be natural. He can't be supernatural, dickhead. If he is the cause of nature, he is the most natural thing. Do you know what else is supernatural? Ghosts! Zombies! Liches! Things we made up! You know why they're supernatural? Because they are past. They are past the natural realms of the world. If we found out that ghosts existed, they would become natural. Because they would become part of the natural process of fucking life. So, God, if he exists, making everything, makes him natural. So we should be able to find him using naturalistic means. But we don't want that because we say our God is outside time and space and is undetectable in any way. And that's totally not a get out of jail fucking free card for any time you think you get in a corner. Well, God works in mysterious ways. Fuck off.
But ladies and gentlemen of this supposed jury, I have one final thing I want you to consider. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Chewbacca. Damn it.
What?
He's using the Chewbacca defense. Chewbacca is a Wookiee from the planet Kashyyyk. But Chewbacca lives on the planet Endor. Now think about that. That does not make sense. But more importantly, you have to ask yourself, what does this have to do with this case? Nothing. Look at me. I'm a lawyer defending a major record company, and I'm talking about Chewbacca. Does that make sense? Ladies and gentlemen, I am not making any sense. And so you have to remember, when you're in that jury room deliberating and conjugating the Emancipation Proclamation, does it make sense? No. Ladies and gentlemen of this supposed jury, it does not make sense. If Chewbacca lives on Endor, you must acquit. The defense rests.
You're saying that you'll believe in the supernatural when you can show me it is a part of nature because science provides natural explanations for the things that we observe.
No, idiot. We would say, show us a supernatural event, and when that happens, and we can explain it, it no longer becomes supernatural, it becomes natural.
Well, science doesn't know everything. Well, science knows it doesn't know everything, otherwise it'd stop. But as well as that, you know, why would they bother? But as well, just because science doesn't know everything doesn't mean you can fill in the gaps with whatever fairy tale most appeals to you.
But it has to be better than nature, right? It's got super in it. You know, like Superman.
The point is, you cannot prove God exists with science. Science studies material causes, effects, and forces.
I'm sorry, herbal medicine. Oh, herbal medicine has been around for thousands of years. Indeed it has, and then we tested it all, and the stuff that worked became medicine.
God's existence is something you would demonstrate philosophically.
Why?
God's existence is something you would represent philosophically because we don't have any actual fucking proof to point to it in any other way, so the only way we can point to him is with word games and leading questions.
But right now I would take homeopaths and I'd put them in a big sack with psychics, astrologers, and priests, and I'd close the top of the sack with string, and I'd hit them all with sticks. Anyone in answer to the difficult questions in life, the I don't know what happens after I die, or please, what happens if my loved ones die, or how can I stop myself dying? The big questions gives you an easy bullshit answer, and you go, well, do you have any evidence for that? And they go, oh, there's more to life than evidence. Get in the fucking sack.
Well, just argue my way, okay? I'm more solid on this ground. Fuck off, you condescending piece of shit. Like, how about this? Why don't you get better in your arguments and deal with the fact that people don't have to argue with you in the way you want to? It's weird. It's almost like every time an atheist argues with a Christian and they don't know something and they actually are, like, you know, intellectually honest, they go out and find out some more about it, you know? And so they don't have that happen to them again. Instead of, why can't you argue the way I want to? I want you to argue in a philosophical sense, because philosophical senses are nebulous, and Christians really rule the nebulous world.
How to share your faith effectively and biblically, to be able to reason with people, learn to circumnavigate or go around the person's intellect.
They don't want you to speak in certainties. Because if you speak in certainties, that leaves them no fucking wiggle room, and they're a bunch of disingenuous, slimy cunts.
The God excuse, the last refuge of a man with no answers and no argument, it came from God. Anything we can't describe must have come from God.
Like other immaterial things you would demonstrate philosophically.
Other immaterial things. Like gravity. Gravity's pretty immaterial because it doesn't have any material. We haven't found a graviton. We haven't found any gravity particle. Come on. Waves are immaterial, not ocean waves, not water waves. Sound waves. They're immaterial, but they have a presence in the world because they affect the material world. You know, like the way God is supposed to? It's weird how, like, God only, like, he only talks to people and shows that he can affect things, right, when you believe in him. And you want to prove it to other people without showing that he's done it. You know what I mean? When somebody says, I'll believe it if you show me he's done it, and it's not just your word that he's done it, well then, what? That's a step too far. That's a step too far. How dare you ask such things? And we should argue in a more philosophical sense. Fucking joke.
Such as the existence of minds.
We can prove that minds exist. Like, fuck off, idiot. It's weird how you can do, like, various... Is it a PEP scan? Or is it a... No, it's a... What's it fucking called? I'll just put it on the screen. You can have one of those, like a CAT scan or whatever, and it shows you the brain activity. And, you know, it's weird. When we look at the brain activity, we can see that there's different centers in the parts of the mammalian, primate, and reptilian parts of the brain that do different things. You know, like the amygdala, the cortex, and, you know, like I nearly said neocortex. That's Crash Bandicoot. But, like, there's a lot of different things, right? There's a lot of different things that do different stuff. And then we also know that there's things like adrenaline, cortisol, there's fucking dopamine, and all these different, you know, things that go through your fucking limbic system that make you feel emotions. And we can actually induce that in people by putting that in them. It's called antidepressants, you know, and like fucking you could just inject people with adrenaline. It does all sorts of stuff. We can make people feel and do all sorts of things merely by injecting the chemicals that are already in the body, because there is receptors in the brains that feel those things, right? And also, it's almost like we can actually watch people's dreams to a limited extent because we can map the brain and its neurons and how they fire so fucking well that we can actually see some images of the dreams that people have. What? Woo, we really, yeah.
Moral truths.
Well, moral truths only seem ambiguous if you deny the existence of, you know, humans, like, evolving in the plains, lagoons, and swamps and jungles of Africa, you know, alongside bonobos and chimpanzees and other things. And it's almost like we're social creatures. And every social creature has an inbuilt way through things like epigenetics that make animals act in certain ways and do certain things, you see? It's almost like some of the instincts that things have also are learned behaviors. And they seem more instinctual than they really are. It's almost like when you actually get down into why animals do things, it's a lot more complicated than, well, they have some morals, or they don't really exist and kind of God makes them do stuff. Birds. What are birds? We'll just never know. Having inbuilt moral codes is because we're a social creature. It's not because God put them there. There's certain things do. Social behaviors. So, you'll see a chimp, going around grooming another chimp. Like they're in a hair salon, like humans do. You can see dogs lick and like nibble at other dogs' mouths to show, will you calm down? Will you the look at your mouth to say, like it's a calming thing. The rolling over thing is a calming thing. Like how they do things is all signals to everything, so they can all act in a cohesive way without the ability of language to happen in a naturalistic way. That these animals, that can't speak and have very limited sounds they can make, work together in a cohesive way. And we changed that because we created a complex language. Like gophers. Is it gophers? They have a really, really complex language that you wouldn't fucking imagine. Was it marmots? Maybe marmots. So I think it's the ones that gave the plague. The ones that cough plague at people or whatever. They have like a stupidly complex language. There's another form of monkey that does as well, that like can tell about specific colors. It can talk about specific predators, because we've actually started to like figure out some of these languages. It's not that God give us morals, like it's that we work together as a human species for so long that it got passed on through, generation to generation, through actions, teachings, and eventually becomes an epigenetic process that then is remembered forever. Like swimming. It's not like God said, and thou shalt be able to swim from birth. It's because, when you look at, like, say, a baboon, the big red rumps, and a rumpus of baboons. That's what you call them. A collection of baboons is a nice rumpus. A rumpus of baboons. And they, when they go through, like, swamps and shit, the young cling to them. And if they fall off, they can swim. And that's how we kind of know that's where we came from. Because we do similar things.
Or numbers and other abstract objects.
Numbers and other abstract objects. Well, it's good that you could just abstract objects. Those things that we made up. Like numbers. Numbers aren't real. Numbers are a completely made up thing. God didn't give us numbers. The Muslims did. Like the specific number system we use comes from the Islamic Golden Age. Like when they made astronomy and did all that stuff, when they were really good because they were in the middle of the Silk Road between Europe and the Middle East and China and stuff like that. And they had all the information pathings through and they got really clever. It's almost like we needed a thing to say how many lions are over there, and we made names for them. It's not a real thing. It's like time. Time isn't real. Time is merely a forward progression of causality. But we have used measurements to split that into things because our planet revolves around the sun 1.4 times, one day and a fourth of an hour or something like that. It's like, that's why we have leap years, because it's not a perfect, day and stuff like that. So we split them up, into a Mesopotamian 60 thing, because they did units of 60. So we stole that for time, you see. It's almost like we made it up. It isn't God-given. We made it up. We used to tell time with, like, there's floral clocks because certain flowers would only bloom at certain times. You'd have your dials because the shadow it leaves at certain times. People use, like, water clocks where, like, fucking you put a bowl in some water and it's got, like, a hole in it. And, like, it takes so much time for the water to fill. Like, this, like, they did it with wax and, like, fucking with wax. And like, there's all sorts of ways. It's a human thing. Human-made concepts aren't God-made. But fucks like this will have you believe such things because humans are worthless scum, and humans can't do anything for ourselves. Everything that is good, that is done, that benefits humans, is because God did it.
An atheist might say, well, God is all-knowing. So even if an atheist personally doesn't know what would convince him, God knows what would convince him. And therefore, God could just show that person the evidence he needs, and he won't be ignorant about God anymore.
Of course! I have no idea specifically what would change my mind about the existence of a God. But if there is such a being as a God, then one would think that God knows exactly what would change my mind and should be capable of taking the action to present the case that would change my mind. And this hasn't happened.
I can't wait to see how he says that this is bullshit. Aren't you excited? I'm so excited. I wish I had alcohol.
I think one way to address these objections is to shift the question away from what evidence would convince you that God exists to what evidence would make it reasonable for someone to believe God exists.
And again, I just have to cut it there for no real reason, aside from I need another, I need another video. So, I'll see y'all next week. Goodbye, everybody.